Hey everyone, Novels Wonderland here. Thank you all for the love and support you've shown me and the channel.
Naruto, Path to Godhood. Chapter 396 to 409, 396. Hayashi's Sage Awakening. Unknowingly, 3 days had already passed. Deep within Ryuchi Cave, Hayashi sat cross-legged, already almost one with the surrounding natural energy. He had reached the second stage of Sage Mode. In just 3 days, he had completed the first stage that many ninja could not achieve in an entire lifetime. The pace of his progress was astonishing, almost godlike. If Jiraiya had known, he would likely have been fuming with frustration, having spent years mastering the basics without such rapid results. Hayashi's speed came down to 2 factors. First, his chakra control was extraordinary. Balancing natural, mental, and physical energy was difficult for ordinary people, but for him, it was instinctive. Second, as soon as natural energy flowed into him, the system recognized his sage art attribute. By investing a significant amount of his remaining ninja points, the process proceeded smoothly and efficiently. The system had even explained the benefits of a high sage art attribute, a high enough rank shortened activation time, allowing instant entry into sage mode, and eventually, indefinite maintenance of the form. Battles were won in seconds, and preparing for a prolonged period like Jiraiya would have been impractical. Hayashi's immediate focus was completing the second stage of Sage Mode. At this stage, the key was to eliminate all distracting thoughts, merging with nature and using its power to fight. Unlike Mount Myaboku's teachings, Tashenheim didn't have him sit on a stone slab. Instead, she used ninjutsu to make the surrounding air vibrate continuously, challenging his concentration. Under such conditions, ordinary people would become irritated, unable to focus for long. But Hayashi discovered a trick. He didn't resist the vibrations. Instead, he became one with the air, letting it flow through his body and mind as if he were part of it. Tashenheim observed silently, a flash of surprise crossing her eyes. To grasp this key so quickly, what kind of prodigy was he? Perhaps he can truly master Sage Mode, she thought. Time passed slowly in that focused atmosphere. 1 month later, Tashenheim, coiled on a rock, suddenly raised her head. Her pupils narrowed in shock as she saw massive streams of natural energy flowing into Hayashi, absorbed perfectly and balanced flawlessly. This is... she murmured, astonished. The scales on Hayashi's body receded, and black patterns emerged around his eyes. His pupils had transformed into golden snake-like orbs, with dark markings radiating outward toward his forehead and nose, the iconic signs of Snake Sage Mode. The twin dragon horns on his head had disappeared, replaced by a single white horn adorned with subtle black patterns, reminiscent of Mitsuki's design. I did it. Hayashi thought, feeling the surging, unrestricted power within him. Tashenheim's expression was complex. Many who had signed contracts with Ryuchi Cave had tried and failed to attain sage arts, some spending over a decade only to be defeated by the difficulty. And yet, this 16-year-old had achieved perfect sage mode in a single month, without any sign of succumbing to the snake's chaos. Congratulations! You have become a true sage, she said, composing herself. Thank you, Lady Tashenheim, for your guidance these past days. Hayashi replied sincerely. Without her, this feat would have been impossible. Tashenheim nodded, her voice calm but firm. You have mastered Sage Mode, but the training is far from over. Ryuchi Cave's Sage Art legacy includes combat techniques as well, similar to Mount Myaboku's Frog Kumite. These methods utilize surrounding natural energy offensively, and their presence is invisible to enemies. Hayashi nodded, ready for the next step. If he could perform techniques impossible in normal state, like wind release, Raisnon, or lightning release, Raisnon, his combat capabilities would soar. With a swift movement, he vanished from the cave and reappeared outside moments later. He leaped, condensing a massive amount of chakra in his palm instantly. Sage Art, Lightning Release, Chidori Sharp Spear. A javelin of lightning, over 5 meters long, formed in his hand. Unlike his normal Chidori, this one solidified into a true spear, possible only due to Sage Chakra. He hurled it forward with immense force. The spear pierced a thick rock layer, exploding violently and kicking up debris. A sharp, ear-piercing screech filled the air, scattering the surrounding snakes in fear. The activation speed, it's even faster than before, Hayashi noted. The Sage Chakra had not only improved speed, but the power of his lightning release techniques had likely doubled. Now, let's see what other ninjutsu can do. A Raiznon, over 3 meters in diameter, appeared in his hand with ease. From a distance, Manda watched the explosions, his heart racing. My God, maybe it's safer to hide for a while, the giant snake muttered, retreating into the shadows. Chapter 397, Mastering Sage Jutsu. Bang, bang, bang. In the dark cave, two shadows collided relentlessly. Snake statues, jagged rocks, and the ground itself bore the marks of their battle, while natural energy surged under their control. It was the 10th day since Hayashi had mastered Sage Mode, and Taschenheim, also a Sage Jutsu user, had joined him in his training. At the cave's edge, a stalactite formed over tens of thousands of years suddenly shattered, scattering countless fragments. From the debris emerged Taschenheim, taking on her human form. Her eyes flashed black, yet no discernible target could be seen. Relying solely on her senses, she threw a punch, colliding with another fist that appeared out of nowhere. Cracks spread instantly across the cave floor. Cold sweat ran down Taschenheim's forehead. After only a few days of training with Hayashi, she found herself being overwhelmed. It wasn't that her Sage Mode application was inferior. She had mastered Sage Jutsu for hundreds of years, far beyond the young ninja's 1 month of practice. Sage Mode amplified physical abilities exponentially. Hayashi's already formidable taijutsu, combined with the power of Sage Mode, made his speed and strength several times greater than normal. Furthermore, Sage Mode allowed precise manipulation of natural energy. Using snake-style techniques, similar to Mount Miyaboku's frog kata, he could enhance each strike. Naruto had once demonstrated the destructive potential of a single blow against the Preta path. Hayashi, however, pushed the technique even further. By focusing his energy, he increased the destructive force of snake style to terrifying levels. His attacks could obliterate an entire body, and the invisible nature of the energy made them almost impossible to defend against. He suspected the first Hokage might have designed Sage Mode to enhance such attacks, though the technique had been lost over time, as Tsunade couldn't utilize Sage Mode effectively. He silently acknowledged his luck in having her as his sensei. Lady Taschenheim, thank you for accompanying me. I have almost mastered the basic applications of Sage Jutsu. Taschenheim wiped sweat from her temples and nodded. I'm impressed you learned so quickly. Now you must practice diligently. Indeed, in such a short time, Hayashi had mastered perfect Sage Mode and snake style. How far he could push Sage Jutsu would now depend entirely on him. Is there anything else? He asked hesitantly. Taschenheim raised a brow. Anything else? What do you mean? Hayashi wasn't asking for a trivial matter, he sought advanced Sage Jutsu, techniques of immense power. In the original stories, Kabuto had used Sage Jutsu against Itachi and Sasuke with devastating effect. One technique, inorganic reanimation, could bring life to inanimate matter, functioning almost like an alternative would release. Another, White Rage technique, vibrated the surrounding air to such a degree that bones felt as if grinding against each other, capable of destabilizing even Susanoo. Though Hayashi couldn't liquefy his body like Kabuto, Orochimaru's soft body modification pills had enhanced his flexibility to a level far beyond ordinary humans, allowing him to withstand such forces with ease. After understanding his request, Taschenheim agreed quickly. If she had taught him Sage Mode, a few advanced techniques were no challenge. Snake Sage Mode, besides granting extraordinary vitality and recovery, also had the innate ability to bestow life upon inorganic matter. Sage Art, Inorganic Reanimation. This is the most powerful Sage Jutsu of Snake Sage Mode. I will teach it to you now, she said. As the name suggests, this technique animates objects that lack biological functions, allowing you to control them. It is fundamentally different from chakra control, she explained. Tashenheim gestured toward the stone floor beside Hayashi. Without any visible motion, the slab twisted as if alive, transforming into stone snakes that coiled and struck menacingly. Hayashi immediately sensed the transformation, even without Sage Mode active. Under Tashenheim's control, the stone snakes rapidly became spikes, shooting toward the stalactites above. So fast, he muttered. The speed rivaled even wind-based blade techniques. After striking the stalactites, the spikes transformed back into stone snakes and merged with the floor, restoring the cave to its original state. Tashenheim then guided Hayashi in using the technique himself. In the dark cave, he began training in inorganic reanimation. Using Sage Chakra as a bridge, he communicated with inanimate objects, breathing life into them and controlling their forms at will. Ryuchi Cave's abundant natural energy accelerated his practice. As he trained, Hayashi noticed a similarity to yin-yang release. Both could bestow vitality upon matter, but yin-yang release could also create matter from nothing, something inorganic reanimation could not do. However, yin-yang release, though powerful, could not counter Sage Jutsu. This realization intrigued him, hinting at the hidden interplay between advanced chakra and sage arts. Hayashi's snake Sage Mode, like Mitsuki's, lacked a chakra cloak, but was even more versatile, granting life, enhancing strength, and amplifying natural energy manipulation. It was arguably more potent than Kabuto's, or even Naruto's Sage Modes. He felt the vast potential of Sage Jutsu spread before him. Techniques like Frog Kata, once limited and almost forgotten, now awaited rediscovery, and with his skill, they could be perfected once again. If you want to read more, check out my Patreon. com/_Zeph Chapter 398, Kirigakure. As one of the 5 great shinobi villages, Kirigakure should have been a peaceful, comfortable place to live. Yet the reality was far from that, as a chilling white terror had gripped the village for 3 long years. What did the rest of the world think of such a strange, foreboding village? During the 50th year of Konoha, a respected ninja evaluated the situation at the Northern Talks. Early Kirigakure was one of the 5 major powers in the ninja world, strong and fearsome. In its middle stage, it closed its borders, became mysterious and unpredictable, and flirted with the largest rogue organizations. Later, it opened itself to the outside world and appeared prosperous. But the population is still small, the shortage of capable people severe, and even the village leader died with regret because he could not find a suitable partner. The future remained uncertain, yet at present, Kirigakure was in panic due to the 3rd Mizukage's blood mist policy. Inside the Mizukage building, the office was brightly lit. Has Suigetsu been located? For the past 3 years, defections had been constant under the Mizukage's policies, and Suigetsu, once a trusted subordinate of the 3rd Mizukage, was the most critical of them all. The 3rd Mizukage flipped through the report expressionlessly, his mind seemingly elsewhere. Juzo Biwa, unable to read the capricious Mizukage's mood, answered stiffly, "Not yet, but we have discovered Suigetsu's trail." "Heh, after half a year, you've finally found a trace." "Efficiency is commendable," the Mizukage said coldly, narrowing his eyes. "As expected of my most trusted 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist. I'll give you 3 more months. If Suigetsu's corpse is not returned by then, I won't mind reducing the 7 to 5. Juzo wiped sweat from his brow. "Yes, 3rd Mizukage-sama." Turning his attention to a short ninja standing nearby, the Mizukage's gaze fell on someone who appeared no more than a child. Green hair, purple eyes, and a stitched scar under his left eye made him seem a teenager, though in truth he was older, preserved by his exceptional physical condition. "Yagura, have you completed the task I assigned?" The small ninja straightened, answering humbly, "It has been completed, 3rd Mizukage-sama." "And any objections from the village?" The Mizukage propped his chin in interest. He had recently proposed that Ninja Academy students be made to fight each other during graduation exams, a controversial policy bound to provoke opposition. Yagura shook his head, calm and deferential. "The policy improves genin combat effectiveness and eliminates unqualified candidates." Everyone understands your intentions, no one objects. And if they do, I will persuade them, third Mizukage-sama. Good, good. The Mizukage stood, patting Yagura on the shoulder with a rare smile. See, everyone, this is my loyal subordinate. Learn from him. After leaving the Mizukage building, Yagura's humble demeanor vanished. His sharp eyes returned, though his childlike appearance lent him a slightly comical air. No one dared laugh, however. A gust of cold wind swept the streets, chilling more than just the bodies it seeped into hearts. 3 groups silently dispersed at an intersection. The once bustling street lay empty, shrouded in fog. After today, the third Mizukage will trust you even more, Toby whispered to Yagura, and our plan will have a higher chance of success. I hope so. Lord Yagura, I notice Juzo is already dissatisfied with the Mizukage. With today's events, why not unite with the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist? Yagura shook his head. The times are different. Our plan has been in motion for a year. Now is the critical moment. The more who know, the higher the risk of exposure. What if the swordsmen report us? I was being careless, but can we truly match the third Mizukage? Toby asked, uncertain. Don't worry. He suffered a serious injury in the Land of Fire. Over the past 2 years, I've observed that his strength has declined considerably. Alas, it was after that injury that he became what he is today. Toby sighed. Yagura exhaled as well. The former third Mizukage had been kind and generous, protective of the villagers. Now he was capricious and ruthless. Entire families were punished for disobedience, countless ordinary shinobi had died, and the academy elimination policy had been instituted. If patience ever broke, Yagura wondered, would a coup be necessary? Contact Suigetsu again today. Suigetsu's defection had been orchestrated by Yagura and his allies to lure the 7 ninja swordsmen away from the village. Also, forget about Terumi-ku. Has he gone back on his word? Yes, he discovered his daughter, Terumi-mei, possesses 2 Kekkei Genkai. Toby exclaimed. Unbelievable, Yagura said, sighing. Had I not seen it myself, I wouldn't have believed it. With such a prodigy, the Terumi clan will eventually reach the village's peak. Those with hope won't risk reckless action. But we cannot retreat. If we do, this village is doomed. I won't allow it. Toby stared blankly. Yagura patted his shoulder. Focus, contact Suigetsu. After the 7 leave, it's our chance to turn the tide. Understood. I hope we all survive this. Yagura shook his head. No, you misunderstand. The third Mizukage failed to inherit the will of the first and second Mizukage. We are simply restoring what was discarded. This is not a coup, it's a correction of errors. Chapter 399, 399. The hidden misconspiracy. Whether it was a coup or a restoration of order, Yagura did not dare act openly within the village. Although the third Mizukage had become increasingly unpopular in recent years, he had managed Kirigakure for nearly 2 decades and held the title of Kage. Once open conflict erupted in the village, the ninjas would naturally side with the Mizukage. Moreover, this was not a simple fight between genin. If things escalated fully, the village itself could be destroyed. This was not what Yagura wished to see. If possible, he preferred to eliminate the third Mizukage outside the village, then announce his disappearance, quietly taking control and restoring order. I hope everything goes smoothly. Yagura murmured to the moon, its silhouette barely visible through the thick mist. It was December of the 36th year of Konoha. Under the third Mizukage's orders, Biwa Juzo had led a 5-man squad out of the village to track the rogue ninja Suigetsu. At the same time, other ninjas continued defecting, prompting the Mizukage to dispatch Anbu to pursue them. 3 days later, late at night, Yagura appeared before the Mizukage's residence. Through the window, the light inside had not yet gone out. He hesitated briefly, then knocked firmly. What is it? The third Mizukage opened the door, stepping out. Yagura knelt immediately. Lord Mizukage, there is an emergency. The patrol team has discovered Soijetsu's tracks outside the village. Soijetsu. Didn't Juzo report him at the easternmost part of the Land of Water? It's unclear, but the patrol team engaged him. The battle continues, though casualties are heavy. The Mizukage nodded thoughtfully. From the shadows a black-masked ANBU appeared, kneeling instantly. What are your orders, Lord Third Mizukage? Mobilize all ANBU in the village. Guard every corner. Kill any suspicious individuals on sight. Let's move. If we delay, Soijetsu will escape. Yagura hesitated, frozen. It wasn't that the plan was failing, but that it was proceeding too smoothly. It felt unreal. If he were the Mizukage, he would never act alone, and certainly not without a dozen ANBU at his side. Yet the third Mizukage appeared confident, ready to face Soijetsu himself. What's wrong? Is there something else? Are we really going directly like this? Of course. I know Soijetsu's strength, he can't harm me yet. And you and the patrol team are there. A faint, mysterious smile touched the Mizukage's face. Yagura's eyes flickered, then he exhaled and led the way. Together they quickly reached a forest on the outskirts of Hidden Mist Village. Swish, swish, silent movement through the trees, until they reached a clearing. Third Mizukage, you've arrived. Soijetsu, waiting, regarded the Mizukage with a complex expression. He had known the Mun for decades, yet the ruler of Hidden Mist now was someone unrecognizable, bloodier, and more ruthless than any before him. The Mizukage's cold gaze met Soijetsu's, revealing no emotion, bone-chilling in its emptiness. Why did you betray me? Soijetsu shook his head. When the second Mizukage led, we were taught to protect the village at all costs, to protect the country. But what have you done? Killing indiscriminately, persecuting subordinates. You have long ceased being Mizukage. Today, I will end you. With just you. Of course not. At that moment, Yagura struck from behind, pulling a kunai and stabbing the Mizukage fiercely in the back. Staggering, the Mizukage looked at Yagura in shock. Even you. Yagura exhaled softly. You didn't expect this, did you? There's no escape today. Swish, swish, swish. Hidden Mist ninjas, lying in ambush, sprang forward at Yagura's signal. Dozens surrounded the Mizukage. These are all ninjas with grievances against you, Yagura said coldly, take him down. The third Mizukage laughed, a sound loud and uncharacteristic. Yagura, you think your trap is clever. Yet you miscalculated one thing. Look closely at who I am. His face slowly transformed into a white creature. Yagura felt his scalp tingle. The dignified Mizukage was actually an imposter. Stop playing games, a suppressed voice came from the distance. Tap, 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 a figure walked slowly forward, stopping a dozen steps away, eyes cold. Why did you come so fast? I haven't finished yet. White Zetsu chuckled, then restrained itself at the icy gaze before it. Yagura frowned at the Mun with long hair and the black-patterned mask. Through a small hole, a bizarre three-tomo Sharingan glimmered. Uchiha, were you sent by Konoha? The masked man let out a low laugh. Konoha, it's been a long time since I visited that village. Stop being mysterious. Who are you? The world calls me Uchiha Madara. Soijetsu sneered from the side. If you're Madara, then I'm the first Hokage. Yagura planted his staff, green flowers adorning it, and roared, how dare you manipulate the Mizukage and toy with Hidden Mist ninjas? No matter who you are, you will die here. Killing intent surged from Yagura's eyes. His subordinates, however, still could not believe their Lord Mizukage was a puppet. So what if I toyed with you? The masked man mocked. Alone yet prepared, his confidence was palpable. A dark purple barrier suddenly enveloped the forest. A ninja at the edge touched it and instantly ignited, consumed by flames in an instant, leaving nothing behind. Everyone, beware. This is the four violet flames formation, Yagura warned. The masked man's eyes shifted, taking on a strange pattern. Half an hour later, the interior of the barrier was painted red with blood. Fugaku removed his mask and wiped it clean. A coup could have been stopped easily, but he did nothing. The false Mizukage, created by White Zetsu, was strong but controllable. When the real Mizukage eventually fought, his true power would be revealed. Fugaku's plan was clear: Yagura would become the fourth Mizukage, with him controlling events from behind the scenes. Replacing his mask, Fugaku turned to White Zetsu. ''Notify the village Jonin disguised as Inu,'' he ordered. ''Tell them the third Mizukage has disappeared.'' Patreon = Zeph Chapter 400, Snowfall 1199 Words in February of Konoha Year 37, the Land of Fire was struck by an unrelenting snowfall. For 3 days and 3 nights, snow blanketed the land in bitter cold, burying forests, rooftops, and roads beneath a heavy white shroud. The usual warmth of the country faded into silence, as if even nature sensed the tension rising within the shinobi world. Inside the Hokage building, a large conference room stood illuminated against the storm outside. Seated at the head of the long conference table was the third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi, dressed in his ceremonial robes. His weathered face was stern, his gaze heavy with thought. Before him sat more than a dozen individuals, the clan heads of Konoha's major families alongside several elite shinobi. Among them were Danzo Shimura, Udatane Koharu, Hamura Mitokado, Tsukumo Hatake, and Orochimaru. They were the pillars of Konoha. The meeting had been convened in haste. Many shinobi were still away on missions, and even those present did not yet know the reason for the urgent summons. The solemn expression on Hiruzen's face was enough to erase any trace of casual conversation. The room fell silent. Once everyone who could attend had arrived, Hiruzen wasted no time. He retrieved a document from his desk and handed it to Koharu. She read through it quickly. As her eyes moved across the page, her expression stiffened. "This intelligence that cannot be possible, can it?" she said, unable to conceal her shock. The document was passed from hand to hand. Each person who read it reacted the same way. Disbelief. A trace of unease. When it reached Danzo, he did not bother opening it. Root had already delivered the information to him. Hiruzen scanned the room before speaking. "You find it hard to believe." "Even I questioned its authenticity at first," he said calmly. "But this intelligence has been verified repeatedly over the course of a month. It should be accurate." Tsukumo frowned. For someone of that level, within his own village. How could this happen? The truth was staggering. The third Mizukage of Kirigakure had vanished without a trace inside his own village. The Mizukage was the leader of one of the 5 great hidden villages, a shinobi whose strength ranked among the highest in the world. To disappear under such circumstances suggested something far more dangerous than a simple assassination. Who could infiltrate Kirigakure and abduct or kill its kage without detection? After a brief pause, Koharu spoke again, regaining her composure. If the investigation took over a month, then the disappearance likely occurred even earlier than that. Kirigakure must have concealed the news from the start. The others nodded. No village would publicly announce that its leader had gone missing. However, in the shinobi world, information always leaked eventually. Konoha had been investigating for a month, but how long had Kirigakure known? More importantly, what had changed inside the hidden mist during that time? The most pressing question was the identity of the fourth Mizukage. A kage shaped a village's foreign policy for years to come. Hiruzen answered, "The intelligence indicates that Yagura Karatachi secured the loyalty of the Umbu captain, Inu. It is highly likely that he has assumed the position of fourth Mizukage." Orochimaru narrowed his eyes. "If it is Yagura, that is entirely possible. I fought him once during my travels in the Land of Water. Do not let his childlike appearance deceive you. His mastery of water release is exceptional, and his ability to produce water clones that mirror his opponent's techniques makes him extremely dangerous. He did not elaborate on the details of that encounter, but the implication was clear. Even Orochimaru had not gained the upper hand easily. Hiruzen's voice grew heavier. Regardless of who becomes the fourth Mizukage, Kirigakure is likely unstable at the moment. From today onward, any shinobi leaving the village for missions must exercise extreme caution. Avoid unnecessary conflict with Kirigakure at all costs. This was the true reason for the gathering. The clan heads and elite shinobi ensured Konoha's stability. Only by understanding the gravity of the situation could they enforce restraint among their forces. Yes, the room responded in unison. At that moment, a sharp knock echoed from the door. A jonin responsible for communications hurried inside, holding a sealed letter. He handed it directly to Hiruzen. Hiruzen read the contents silently. His brows tightened. Danzo spoke at last. "What is it?" "The disappearance of the third Mizukage has been publicly confirmed," Hiruzen said. The message was sent by Yagura, identifying himself as the fourth Mizukage. A heavy silence settled over the room. The succession had been confirmed faster than expected. Koharu frowned slightly. "That is strange. Why would Kirigakure openly inform Konoha of such an event? Did he say anything else?" "Yagura has proposed convening a 5-Kage summit to address the disappearance." The words struck the room like an explosion. Ordinarily, a village would conceal such humiliation and resolve it internally. Instead, Yagura had chosen to call a 5-Kage summit, openly acknowledging the crisis. Either he was reckless, or he had already identified a suspect among the other great nations. Which led to a more pressing question. Should Konoha attend? Hiruzen's voice was steady. "We must attend." Konoha did not commit this act. Refusing the invitation would only cast suspicion upon us. Danzo disagreed. "We know little about Yagura. What if the summit is merely a pretext? While you travel to the land of iron, Kirigakure could mobilize forces and strike the land of fire." It was not an unreasonable concern. If the Hokage were absent and the coast left exposed, Konoha could suffer significant damage. Hiruzen nodded slowly. "We will not be careless. Defensive preparations along the coastline will begin immediately." He rose from his seat. "That concludes the meeting. Return to your duties." The shinobi departed one by one, leaving only Hiruzen, Danzo, Koharu, and Hamura in the quiet conference room as snow continued to fall beyond the windows. Far away in Sunagakure, a similar discussion unfolded. Within the hidden sand village, the third Kazekage scoffed openly. To disappear within his own village, that Mizukage is utterly incompetent. He has disgraced the title of Kage. Standing beside him, his student Raza listened with quiet agreement. Confident in his own power, he believed such weakness would never define his future leadership. Raza, the third Kazekage, asked after a moment, "Should we attend the 5-Kage summit?" Raza shook his head. "Teacher, the land of water is distant from us. Whatever occurred in Kirigakure is not our responsibility." The third Kazekage placed the scroll on the table, his expression turning colder. "What happens in Kirigakure may not concern us directly. But Konoha does." For years had passed since the end of the Second Great Ninja War. The treaty that followed had forced Sunagakure into unfavorable terms. Konoha had flourished in the aftermath, while the Sand struggled under economic strain. "Konoha's prosperity has come at our expense," the Kazekage said. "We have endured Ino. It may be time to settle our account with Hiruzen Sarutobi." He allowed a thin smile to form. "I suspect Inoki feels the same." Chapter 401, 401, The Summit of Accusations 1244 words. The disappearance of the third Mizukage, Yagura's sudden rise to power, and the revival of the 5-Kage summit turned the early winter of Konoha Year 37 into a season of restless winds and sharp tension. Kirigakure, a village that had long kept a low profile, now stood at the center of the shinobi world's attention. If the world of shinobi had headlines, every major one would have revolved around the hidden mist. And at the heart of it all was the Five Kage Summit. Historically, the Five Kage Summit had convened 3 times before. The first was initiated by Hashirama Senju, the first Hokage. Its purpose was to redistribute the tailed beasts among the great nations in order to maintain balance. However, redistribution did not mean charity. Konoha had borne the burden of capturing and containing these powerful creatures. Naturally, compensation was required. The second summit was called by the second Kazekage to resolve border disputes between nations. Those disputes had existed for years, but were left unspoken out of respect for the first Hokage's overwhelming influence. After his passing, that restraint faded. The third was convened by Hiruzen Sarutobi to address tensions surrounding the Land of Fire's gold mines. That meeting, however, was limited in attendance. Only the Hokage, the Kazekage, and Hanzo of Omegakure participated. The negotiations deteriorated into open conflict, and from the clash, Hanzo's title as the demigod spread throughout the world. Ironically, aside from the first summit, each gathering of the Kage had ultimately led to greater conflict rather than peace. By long-standing tradition, the summit was held in the Land of Iron. Land of Iron. The Land of Iron, built upon the mountain known as Three Wolves, was a neutral nation. Unlike the shinobi villages, it was defended by samurai rather than ninja. With its independent culture and military strength, it served as common ground for negotiations among the 5 great nations. At this time of year, the country lay covered in silver snow, appearing calm and untouched by the turmoil brewing beneath the surface. Yet every major village watched closely, aware that the outcome of this meeting could reshape the balance of power. Finally, the Five Kage Summit began. In a dimly lit hall stood a circular table surrounded by 5 heavy curtains, each embroidered with the symbol of a great nation. Footsteps echoed from behind each curtain. One by one, the leaders of the 5 great shinobi nations emerged, accompanied by their escorts. Hiruzen Sarutobi's gaze swept across the room before settling on the youngest among them, the newly appointed 4th Mizukage, Yagura Karatachi. Aside from Yagura, Hiruzen had dealt with every Kage present for many years. A short, elderly man floated lightly in the air with his hands clasped behind his back. Becoming Mizukage at such a young age is quite remarkable, he said with a thin smile. The speaker was Inoki, the 3rd Tsuchikage of Iwagakure. On the surface it sounded like praise. In truth, it was mockery. Yagura's youthful appearance had long drawn attention, though his actual age was not so young. Yagura responded calmly, neither offended nor submissive. 3rd Tsuchikage, you have served your village for many years despite your age. We younger generation naturally must shoulder our responsibilities as well. However, you should also take care of your health. I have heard that your back troubles you frequently. That is not a good sign. After all, even the 3rd Hokage, who is not much younger than you, still has the vitality to raise a son. Hiruzen chuckled softly when dragged into the exchange. I did not expect the 4th Mizukage to be so well informed about my personal affairs. You flatter me. The truth is that Konoha is stable and prosperous. There are no internal purges or oppressive policies. My subordinates are competent, which leaves me with ample time. One must find ways to spend it. Yagura and Inoki exchanged brief, irritated glances. Before the verbal sparring escalated further, a deep voice interrupted. Let us discuss the real matter. The speaker was the 3rd Raikage of Kumogakure, his tone blunt and impatient. The 5 Kage took their seats, while their escorts remained behind the curtains. Yagura spoke first. This summit has been convened to address the disappearance of the 3rd Mizukage of Kirigakure. As he said this, his gaze shifted directly to Hiruzen. Hiruzen's expression remained composed, though he sensed the direction of the accusation. Yagura continued, 3rd Hokage, do you have anything to say? Hiruzen spread his hands lightly. I fail to see how the disappearance of Kirigakure's leader concerns Konoha. If the hidden mist requires assistance in its investigation, we are willing to help, though our services are not inexpensive. Let us not pretend, Yagura replied, producing a scroll. This is testimony from a missing nin named Suigetsu. He claims that he and Konoha's lightning blade operative were involved in the assassination of the third Mizukage. We request that Konoha hand over Uchiha Hayashi. At that name, the air grew heavier. Hiruzen's eyes darkened slightly. He had not expected the accusation to fall upon Hayashi. Uchiha Hayashi is only 17, Hiruzen replied evenly. The third Mizukage was one of the most powerful shinobi in the world. Are we to believe that a teenager infiltrated Kirigakure and assassinated him in his own stronghold? If strength alone determines guilt, then any of you could be suspects. The third Raikage interjected. During the Second Great Ninja War, the third Kazekage was captured by a small Konoha unit that included Orochimaru and Tsukumo. Hayashi was only 12 then, and he already demonstrated formidable capability. At 17, it is not impossible. He glanced toward Orochimaru and Tsukumo Hatake, seated behind the curtain as escorts. The third Kazekage's expression darkened, clearly displeased at being reminded of that humiliation. Hiruzen folded his arms calmly. If capability alone is enough for accusation, then this summit becomes meaningless. Furthermore, Hayashi has not left Konoha. Anoki chuckled. Has he not? Our intelligence suggests that Konoha's lightning blade has not been seen publicly for months. Hiruzen did not reveal Hayashi's actual whereabouts. Instead, he smiled faintly. Third Tsuchikage, since your information network is so efficient, perhaps you could explain why your village's Rashi has also been absent. I heard he left after a disagreement. Anoki's eyes narrowed. Rashi, the Four-Tails Jinchuriki, was a sensitive topic. If we are speculating, Hiruzen continued, one could imagine that Rashi sought revenge. After all, the second Mizukage and second Tsuchikage perished together in battle, and the third Mizukage was the second Mizukage's disciple. That is unfounded slander, Anoki snapped. Hiruzen clapped lightly. Accusations require evidence. That wisdom applies universally. Behind the curtain, Tsukumo suppressed a laugh. I never realized the Hokage's words could be this sharp, he whispered. Orochimaru responded quietly, Sensei rarely reveals this side of himself. Hiruzen rose from his seat and faced Yagura directly. You seek to condemn a Konoha shinobi based solely on the statement of a rogue ninja. That is reckless. If we conducted diplomacy in such a manner, chaos would follow. After sitting down, he added casually, on my way here, a ramen shop owner's wife mistook you for her long-lost son. Should I have taken that claim seriously as well? Tone remained light, but his gaze was unwavering. The hall fell silent as tension settled heavily over the round table. Look up _Zeph on Patreon to get access to chapters in advance. Chapter 402, Shattered Alliance 1187 words, the third Hokage's tongue remains as sharp as ever. Anoki allowed himself a faint smile. In his eyes, Hiruzen Sarutobi was a man capable of immense hypocrisy, yet even he had to acknowledge that the Hokage's rhetoric far surpassed that of the young fourth Mizukage. But eloquence alone did not matter. From the beginning, Yagura Karatachi had intended to place the blame squarely on Konoha. Whether the evidence was convincing was irrelevant. War required only an excuse. Truth was rarely part of the calculation. Sensing the oppressive tension thickening the air, the previously silent third Kazekage suddenly spoke. Since this issue cannot be resolved today, let us set it aside and discuss another matter. Another matter? The third Raikage asked bluntly. The Kazekage interlaced his fingers and smiled faintly. I propose that we reopen the treaty signed with Konoha 4 years ago. Hiruzen's expression remained calm. I see no issue with that agreement. Let the Kazekage finish, Anoki interjected coolly. This is the 5 Kage summit. Konoha may be powerful, but you cannot deny another Kage the right to speak. Hiruzen gave a restrained snort but remained silent. The third Kazekage stood, his voice measured. Following the Second Great Ninja War, Tsunegakure signed a post-war accord with Konoha. It was, plainly speaking, an unequal treaty. Our borders were forced to revert to lines established before the First Great Ninja War. Within 50 kilometers east and west, the Land of Wind must remain militarily undefended. Tsunegakure is prohibited from developing certain advanced weaponry or researching toxic agents. The Ueno gold mines are to be exploited by the Land of Fire for 10 years, under Konoha's administration. In addition, we are required to pay substantial reparations. He paused only briefly before continuing. According to our current revenue, it will take 28 years to complete those payments. A heavy silence followed. The Kazekage turned toward Inoki. And Iwagakure? Inoki's expression darkened. We possess abundant ore, so our burden is lighter. 18 years. 18, the Kazekage repeated softly. You will live to see yours cleared. The Land of Rain, however, faces 2 centuries of repayment. 2 centuries, Inoki muttered. Konoha itself is only 37 years old. Who can guarantee the 5 great nations will even exist 200 years from now? The third Raikage turned to Hiruzen. Is all of this accurate? Hiruzen shrugged slightly. These were the conditions set by the victor. That mindset is unacceptable, the Raikage said sharply. The 5 great nations claim to be allies in maintaining balance. Yet Konoha treats the others as defeated subordinates. Hiruzen's eyes shifted to the Kazekage. What precisely do you want? Abolish the existing treaty, the Kazekage replied, and draft a new one. He unfurled a prepared map across the round table. Every gaze in the chamber focused on it. Red marks dotted several mineral-rich regions within the Land of Fire. The Land of Wind is barren and resource-poor, the Kazekage said evenly. The Land of Fire is not. We request the right for Tsunegakure to develop these mines. In exchange, we offer labor. My disciple, Raza, has mastered the gold dust technique. He can assist in extraction at no cost. When he finished speaking, his eyes locked with Hiruzen's. Under the watchful gaze of the other 4 Kage, Hiruzen slowly rose to his feet. He reached forward, grasped the map, and tore it cleanly in half. The paper split with a sharp sound. Fragments drifted downward like falling snow. If I refuse? Hiruzen asked calmly. Inoki's voice grew cold. Hokage, I advise you to consider your village's interests carefully. And I advise you the same, Hiruzen replied without hesitation. Yagura's voice lowered, steady but heavy. You refuse to hand over Uchiha Hayashi. You refuse to relinquish resources. Third Hokage, are you prepared to stand against all of us? Hiruzen's gaze moved slowly across the 4 Kage. Konoha has endured 2 great ninja wars, he said. We do not seek another. But if any nation threatens our land or our people, we will respond without hesitation. The moment he finished speaking, overwhelming killing intent surged through the room. The air trembled. The round table groaned under invisible pressure as faint cracks spread across its surface. Bodyguards burst through the curtains, weapons drawn. Behind Konoha's curtain, Orochimaru remained still, though his body was coiled like a serpent ready to strike. Tsukumo Hatake drew the white light chakra saber, its faint glow cutting through the tension. Yet none advanced further. This was the Land of Iron. Open battle here would violate long-standing neutrality. One by one, the Kage withdrew their killing intent. In that case, Yagura said, eyes shadowed, Kirigakure will test Konoha's resolve. The declaration was unmistakable. My Kumogakure will do the same, the third Raikage added, slamming his fist onto the table. Iwagakure still has unfinished business from the previous war, Inoki said coldly. With 3 voices already aligned, the Kazekage spoke last. Tsunegakure has debts to collect. 4 declarations stood against one. Hiruzen did not step back. If war is what you choose, he said firmly, Konoha will answer. The five Kage summit ended not with compromise, but with open hostility. Outside the conference hall, heavy snow continued to fall over the land of iron. Hiruzen stood quietly for a moment, watching the endless white landscape. Barely 4 years, he murmured. And war returns. Orochimaru remained silent before finally speaking in his hoarse tone. This was inevitable. The other villages sought an opportunity. Hiruzen shook his head slowly. I share the responsibility. Hayashi advised me against imposing such harsh conditions after the last war. He said that excessive pressure would only breed resentment in Iwagakure and Sunagakure. He believed it would undermine long-term stability. I ignored him. I was determined to weaken them as much as possible. He exhaled quietly. After the first Great Ninja War, peace lasted more than a decade. This time, we managed only 4 years. Snow gathered on his shoulders as he stood motionless. Perhaps I am growing old. When this war ends, I may step down. Neither Orochimaru nor Tsukumo responded. The matter of succession was beyond them. Suddenly, Orochimaru's expression shifted. He formed hand seals and used the summoning jutsu. A messenger snake appeared, carrying a scroll. Sensei, urgent news from Konoha. Orochimaru handed the scroll to Hiruzen. As Hiruzen read, his brow tightened. Kirigakure has already launched a surprise attack, he said gravely. They used the summit as a distraction. Casualties? Tsukumo asked. Manageable. Our prior preparations limited the damage. Hiruzen's voice hardened. Send word to Konoha. Recall every shinobi currently outside the village. All missions are to be abandoned immediately. Inform Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Hayashi to return at once. Snow continued to fall as his final words cut through the silence. Tell them the third great ninja war has begun. The 3 figures walked slowly into the snowfall. Their footprints marked the ground briefly before fresh snow covered them, as though they had never been there. The earth stretched endlessly in white, silent and pure, while war once again descended upon the shinobi world. End of volume. Chapter 403, 403, Gathering Storm over Konoha. 1369 words. In the early morning, the sky remained a hazy gray, heavy clouds rolling across the horizon like a silent omen. Unlike its usual calm, the gates of Konohagakure were filled with restless movement. Shinobi assembled in formation, their armor and flak jackets catching the faint light. Under the command of the leading jonin, the noise gradually faded. Orders were given, signals passed, and the troops marched out of the village in disciplined silence. Uchiha Hayashi stood among the departing figures, watching the steady stream of shinobi disappear beyond the gates. After a brief moment, he turned and made his way toward the Hokage building. As he approached the central district, more civilians filled the streets. Their voices were hushed, their expressions tense. The air felt heavy, pressed down by uncertainty. Hayashi was familiar with this atmosphere. When the Second Great Ninja War erupted, the village had felt exactly the same. Back then, he had only been a student at the academy. War never brings joy. Everyone despises it, yet no one can stop its arrival. After entering the Hokage building, Hayashi pushed open the door to the Hokage's office. The moment he stepped inside, the umbu concealed nearby silently withdrew. Whatever discussion would take place was not meant for their ears. You are back, Hayashi. Standing alone by the second-floor window was the third Hokage, Hiruzen Sarutobi. He gazed at the pale morning sky, his posture carrying a trace of solitude. Konoha Jonin, Uchiha Hayashi, reporting to third Hokage-sama. Enough with the formalities. Hiruzen waved him over. Hayashi stepped forward and stood beside him. From the window, the Hokage rock loomed in the distance, the massive stone faces overlooking the village. At 17, Hayashi already stood taller than the third Hokage. His short black hair framed a sharp, youthful face. There was confidence in his eyes, and an intensity that came from both talent and experience. "How is your senjutsu training progressing?" Hiruzen asked. "I have fully mastered it. If you have not yet learned it, in the future you can." Hiruzen paused mid-sentence and turned slowly. "What did you just say?" "I have fully mastered senjutsu." Hiruzen inhaled sharply. He had only asked casually. He never expected Hayashi to succeed, let alone within 6 months. He understood the difficulty of senjutsu better than most. Jiraiya had trained in it for years and still struggled to stabilize Sage Mode. Yet Hayashi now claimed complete mastery. For a brief moment, Hiruzen wondered whether fatigue was affecting his hearing. He studied the young Uchiha carefully. "Is there any technique you cannot learn?" he finally asked. Hayashi considered the question seriously. "I have not found one so far." Hiruzen was momentarily speechless. Even he, known as the professor of ninjutsu, would not dare make such a claim. Yet Hayashi had the record to justify his confidence. At the academy, he had created several A-rank ninjutsu. He became a jonin the same year he graduated, setting the record as the youngest in the shinobi world. He once split Shikaku apart with a lightning release technique, and earned distinguished merit on 2 battlefields. Compared to him, many so-called geniuses paled in comparison. Even Orochimaru, Hiruzen's most prized disciple, could not completely overshadow him. Fortunately, Hayashi was his own grand disciple, not an enemy. Hiruzen's mood visibly improved. "Since you have mastered senjutsu, you should exchange experiences with Jiraiya. He will be delighted." "Are you certain?" Hayashi asked, narrowing his eyes slightly. Hiruzen chuckled. "It has been years and Jiraiya is still refining his Sage Mode. A little motivation will do him good." Hayashi was unconvinced. If he followed that advice, there was a high chance Jiraiya would immortalize him in one of his novels, and not in a flattering way. "Enough idle talk." Hiruzen's expression grew serious. "You already know why I called you back. The 3rd Mizukage has disappeared. Has the cause been identified?" Hayashi asked. Hiruzen shook his head. "It was too clean. No traces left behind. But the cause does not matter. Sometimes, all it takes to ignite war is a spark. No one cares who struck the match." Hayashi remained silent. The Mizukage's disappearance was merely a trigger. If not him, it would have been another Kage. History would not halt for a single individual. "What is the current situation in the shinobi world?" Hayashi asked. "For now, everyone is testing one another." Hiruzen led him to a large table covered with a detailed strategic map. "The most immediate threat comes from Tsunagakure." Hayashi frowned slightly. "Not Kirigakure." Kirigakure attempted to exploit the 5 Kage summit and strike the Land of Fire. However, we reinforced our coastal defenses in advance. Their offensive did not achieve its intended results. In truth, Kirigakure had been pushed back decisively. They had not fought in a major war for nearly 2 decades, and large-scale warfare was very different from isolated missions. Their forces are now stationed in the Land of Hot Water, the Land of Waves, and the Land of Bears, Hiruzen continued. Hayashi studied the map. The 3 nations formed a straight line along the coastline. Kirigakure clearly intended to create a blockade, limiting Konoha's mobility and forcing a multi-front defense. But for now, that front is stable, Hiruzen said. Tsunagakure is the pressing concern. Their vanguard has reached the border between the Land of Wind and the Land of Rivers. Approximately 1,000 shinobi. The commander is Raza, disciple of the 3rd Kazekage. Hayashi's brows lifted slightly. He is only 17. Tsunagakure's internal situation is complicated, Hiruzen replied carefully. After the last war, dissatisfaction with the 3rd Kazekage has grown. The factions once led by Chiyo and Ebizo have gradually withdrawn from active leadership. So they are facing internal strife, Hayashi concluded. The third Kazekage seeks to redirect that tension outward. War is the most effective method. Hayashi gave a faint nod. History had proven that many leaders relied on external conflict to suppress internal unrest. And Iwagakure, he asked. Their forces are at the border of the land of grass, building supply lines. They have also divided their troops. The land of waterfalls, Hayashi guessed. Hiruzen nodded approvingly. Anoki remains wary of Kumogakure. He has not forgotten the Second Great Ninja War. And Kumogakure? They are mobilizing but have yet to deploy. The third Raikage is waiting for the right opportunity. Kumogakure preferred decisive intervention over reckless engagement. They would strike only when the advantage was clear. And the land of rain? Hayashi asked. I have sent Danzo to negotiate with Hanzo. The land of rain is struggling with famine and instability. For now they are unlikely to intervene. Hayashi's thoughts flickered briefly toward a certain organization that claimed to seek peace, but he kept the thought to himself. The situation is fluid, Hiruzen concluded. No village has committed fully. Everyone is probing. He closed the map and looked directly at Hayashi. Since you have mastered Senjutsu, your strength is no longer that of an ordinary jonin. I will assign you accordingly. I understand. You and Jiraiya will each lead a detachment. Leave intelligence teams in the land of grass and the land of hot water. The main force will advance to the land of wind battlefield and rendezvous with the vanguard. The allocation was careful. Konoha could not commit excessive numbers to a single front while facing multiple threats. If there are no questions, the forces will assemble tomorrow at 7 in the morning. Coordinate with Jiraiya if necessary. Hiruzen handed him a document listing the intelligence operatives. Then his tone deepened. When Orochimaru departed for the front, I told him this. Now I tell you. You know Sunagakure well. Our situation is stable for the moment, but prolonged war will not favor us. Among the great villages, they are the weakest. His gaze hardened. I need you to defeat them as swiftly as possible. This is not like the last war. We are facing a coalition. They can afford losses. We cannot. Hayashi met his eyes without hesitation. Understood. Hiruzen exhaled slowly. Everything rests in your hands. Send Power Stones for bonus chapters. Patreon =_Zeph chapter 404, dividing the front lines. 1040 words. As a seasoned politician, the third Hokage's understanding of the shinobi world far surpassed that of Uchiha Hayashi. Hayashi trusted his judgment completely. In simple terms, Sunagakure was entangled in internal conflict. Kirigakure had stumbled at the start of its campaign. Kumogakure preferred to wait patiently for the right moment. Iwagakure trusted no one and prepared for betrayal at every turn. Each of the four great villages involved in this looming war had its own complications. However, complications always come with solutions. As the third Hokage had said, war could redirect any internal contradiction. And the focus of that redirection was Konoha, increasingly portrayed by the other nations as the common enemy. Konoha was powerful, a dominant force among the 5 great nations. Yet no matter how confident the village appeared, one truth remained undeniable. The leaf could not casually fight 4 enemies at once, much less 5. Only the first Hokage, Hashirama Senju, had once stood against overwhelming opposition and prevailed. But that era had passed. Legends could not be summoned from the grave. The core principle of warfare was simple: concentrate superior force and eliminate enemies one by one. That was precisely the third Hokage's strategy. Although the number of shinobi deployed to the Land of Wind would not greatly exceed Sunagakure's forces, in Hiruzen's eyes it was still a decisive advantage. After all, Konoha had already defeated Sunagakure twice before. Fresh from training at Ryuchi Cave, Hayashi had little time to rest. At dawn the next day, he brought Mikoto with him, and headed toward Konoha's main gate. The number of Uchiha accompanying them was surprisingly small. To be precise, it was only Hayashi and Mikoto. Aside from the military police force remaining within the village, most of the Uchiha clan had already been deployed to counter Kirigakure. In terms of direct battlefield compatibility, the Hyuga clan would have been the ideal counter to Kirigakure due to the Byakugan's superior perception. However, the strategic value of the Byakugan made it too precious to concentrate on a single front. Every battlefield requested Hyuga support, and there simply were not enough to satisfy all demands. As a result, the Sharingan-bearing Uchiha were assigned to the Mist Front instead. Their visual prowess granted them perception and combat adaptability far beyond the average shinobi. At the gate, a disciplined unit of shinobi had already assembled. Jiraiya stood at the front, prepared to depart. Years had passed, and Hayashi was not the only one who had grown stronger. Jiraiya's chakra presence was deeper and heavier than before. Yet the carefree air about him had not changed in the slightest. "Haha, long time no see." Jiraiya greeted them with a booming laugh before Hayashi could speak. "Mikoto, you've grown into quite the young lady. Next time you visit the Konoha hot springs, remember to invite me." Some habits clearly refused to fade with age. Standing slightly behind Hayashi, Mikoto remained composed. "Of course. I will make sure to invite Lady Tsunade as well." Jiraiya froze, then forced a laugh. "Let us leave Tsunade out of it. I would prefer to keep my life intact." He rubbed his chest unconsciously, recalling the painful consequences of his past mischief. "Has Tsunade returned to the village?" Hayashi asked once the banter ended. "Not yet," Jiraiya replied, shaking his head. "But she should be back soon. Your teacher Orochimaru has already departed for the Wind Country front. My students Minato and Tsukumo are with him." Nawaki was not among them. Proficient in water release, he had been dispatched earlier to reinforce the mist battlefield. "You already know the broad situation from the third Hokage," Jiraiya continued. "Our immediate task is to escort these intelligence teams and scatter them along key borders. Once that is complete, we will take the remaining forces and reinforce the wind front from another direction." After a brief exchange, Jiraiya stepped forward and addressed the assembled intelligence unit. "The third Hokage has already explained your mission. As your escort, I will not ask about your specific objectives or the information you gather. No one else is permitted to ask either. Trust only the reports you personally send back to Konoha. Even comrades can be misled in times of war. Is that understood?" "Understood." With that unified response, the group departed from the gates of Konoha. Most of the intelligence shinobi were not elite fighters. Only a few had reached special jonin rank. However, in terms of mobility and reconnaissance skill, they were comparable to standard jonin. As they advanced at high speed, Mikoto gradually slowed her pace and moved beside Hayashi near the rear of the formation. "Why not let them travel alone?" she asked quietly. "Detoring through the land of grass increases our travel time. Do you remember our first mission in the land of rain?" Hayashi replied. Mikoto nodded immediately. They had been sent for reconnaissance and nearly lost their entire team, after encountering Gari of Iwagakure. "Effective intelligence is not determined by sensory skill alone," Hayashi said calmly. "Raw combat strength matters just as much." He lowered his voice further. "Look closely at this unit. Most of them are only at Chunin level, perhaps slightly stronger than we were back then. Even if they detect danger early, without sufficient strength the outcome will not change." Mikoto understood instantly. Without an escort, many of these shinobi would die before even reaching their assigned borders. Even after arrival, survival would remain uncertain. Those who endured would eventually become elites. Those who fell would simply be recorded as casualties. She did not return to her original position. Instead, she continued running beside Hayashi, matching his pace as the unit raced toward the frontier of the Land of Fire. The journey was tense yet strangely uneventful. After 3 days, they reached the border near the land of grass. There Hayashi and Jiraiya divided the forces. The intelligence shinobi were dispatched in small groups toward their respective territories. Hayashi led the remaining troops to a border town for a brief night of rest. The following day, they rendezvoused with Jiraiya's detachment once more. Without further delay, the combined forces advanced into the land of wind. The desert horizon stretched endlessly ahead. Hayashi's gaze hardened. Chapter 405, Desert Front. 1074 words. In most wars between the great nations, battles were fought on the soil of smaller countries. During the Second Great Ninja War, the conflict between Konoha and Sunagakure had unfolded entirely within the land of rivers. The major powers preferred proxy battlefields, places where they could clash without directly damaging their own territories. This time, however, the situation was different. 2 consecutive defeats had taught Sunagakure a painful lesson. If they could not overcome Konoha in a conventional engagement, then they would simply choose terrain that favored them. Forests granted Konoha a natural advantage. At sea, Kirigakure reigned supreme. But in the desert, Sunagakure's combat capability surpassed every other village. Moreover, the deeper Konoha's forces pushed toward the land of wind, the longer and more vulnerable their supply lines became. Whether Suna dispatched shinobi to sabotage those lines or Konoha attempted reinforcement and resupply, the difficulty multiplied significantly. Naturally, Konoha would have preferred to stall the battlefield within the land of rivers, just as they had done before. But this war was not a simple bilateral conflict. This time, 4 great nations were coordinating their pressure. If Konoha became entangled in prolonged warfare on one front, it would risk being attacked from multiple directions. As previously determined, Konoha's only viable strategy was to concentrate its strength and eliminate one enemy swiftly. Strategically, that meant defeating Sunagakure first. Only after removing the weakest of the coalition could Konoha afford to redistribute its forces against the remaining threats. They could not afford to stare across a vast no-man's land and wait passively. Under such circumstances, the battlefield selection inevitably favored Sunagakure. The third Kazekage's plan was proving effective. Even the relentless desert heat alone posed a serious challenge to Konoha's shinobi. After 3 days of forced marching beneath the blazing sun, the unit led by Hayashi and Jiraiya finally arrived at Konoha's forward base along the border of the land of wind. The camp stood firmly against the desert winds, banners snapping under the dry sky. The moment they passed through the gate, Jiraiya spoke briskly. Head straight to the main tent in the center. Orochimaru sent word, the war council is already in session. Understood, Hayashi replied, glancing at Mikoto beside him. Let's go. Mikoto hesitated slightly. War councils were typically restricted to senior personnel. However, after a brief pause, she followed him inside. Within the central tent, several jonin were already gathered around a large table covered with maps and documents. Aside from Orochimaru, there were many experienced commanders present. When Hayashi, Jiraiya, and Mikoto entered, no one turned their heads. The discussion had reached a critical stage. They quietly moved to a corner and waited. Soon, assignments for the ordinary jonin concluded. After distributing orders, the majority of attendees exited the tent, leaving behind only key figures. Although Mikoto was technically an ordinary jonin, her status was far from ordinary. As Orochimaru's disciple, she naturally remained. Orochimaru's golden eyes shifted toward Hayashi. It has only been a few months, yet you have grown stronger again, he said calmly, his tone soft and measured. Hayashi did not respond verbally, but he understood the implication. His training at Ryuchi Cave had significantly refined his control over Sage Mode. Even without fully activating it, his chakra presence was different from before. Orochimaru had heard about the sage arts of Ryuchi Cave, yet he had never personally witnessed their true potential. Without direct exposure, even someone as brilliant as him could not fully appreciate the magnitude of that power. It was similar to how he once lived in Konoha for years without paying much attention to the Sharingan, until he encountered a certain prodigy, and witnessed the terrifying strength of the Mangekyo Sharingan. Power revealed perspective. Compared to his composed acknowledgement of Hayashi and Mikoto, Orochimaru showed little enthusiasm toward Jiraiya, whom he had not seen for years. Jiraiya, clearly hoping for a more emotional reunion, looked mildly disappointed. Still, judging by the faint smirk on his face, he was likely already planning to immortalize Orochimaru in his next manuscript. Regarding camp logistics, Orochimaru continued, turning to Jiraiya, the documents on the table contain all relevant details. Review them when you have time. If I am deployed on a mission, you will assume command. Currently, Orochimaru served as the supreme commander of the Wind Front, with Jiraiya as his deputy. In terms of combat strength, the camp also housed Tsukumo Hatake, known as the White Fang of Konoha, along with Uchiha Hayashi. However, Tsukumo had little patience for administrative matters. Compared to him, Jiraiya possessed greater adaptability in managing personnel and battlefield coordination. I understand, Jiraiya replied seriously. The desert front was volatile. A commander might be summoned to the battlefield at any moment. One person alone could not shoulder the entire burden. During the Second Great Ninja War, even a single front had required multiple commanders to maintain balance. After concluding instructions to Jiraiya, Orochimaru turned his attention back to Hayashi and Mikoto. The village has not committed its full strength to the Land of Wind, he said evenly. We have only a few dozen elite Jonin. While we possess a considerable number of standard Jonin and Chunin, they will not determine the final outcome. He gestured for them to approach the map. With swift precision, Orochimaru formed 3 hand seals. Chakra flowed subtly, and a section of the map became highlighted in red ink. Observe this point carefully. He tapped the marked location. Tomorrow, a Sunagakure raiding unit will pass through this route. I have prepared detailed intelligence for you. Intercept and eliminate them before they reach their encampment. His voice remained calm, yet the meaning was unmistakable. A clean, decisive elimination. The tent prepared for you is located in the central residential area, Orochimaru added. Receiving their assignment, Hayashi and Mikoto left the command tent. Unless extraordinary circumstances occurred, camp layouts rarely changed. Drawing from his experience during the previous war, Hayashi easily navigated toward Konoha's residential sector. According to Orochimaru, someone familiar had arranged their accommodations. If there were no surprises, that person would likely be waiting nearby. Under the gradually brightening moonlight, they spotted a young blonde shinobi standing at the entrance. Minato, Hayashi called out as he approached. It has been AW without hesitation, the two embraced firmly, a reunion between comrades forged in battle. If you want to read more, check out my Patreon. com/_Zeph Chapter 406, Sage Mode in the Desert Canyon 1031 words. After several months apart, Minato had grown noticeably darker. The desert sun of the Land of Wind was merciless. As part of the vanguard forces stationed on this front, Minato had spent months exposed to sand and scorching heat. The once fair-skinned blonde now carried a healthy bronze tone that spoke of long days on the battlefield. Now a Jonin, Minato, like Hayashi before him, had begun leading genin squads on missions across the peripheral war zones. It was a responsibility every Jonin eventually bore. No one was exempt, not even someone as talented as him. Within their small circle, aside from Hayashi and Mikoto who had just arrived, only Minato and Kana had been assigned to the Wind Front. Kana, as a medical ninja and Tsunade's disciple, had stepped up to oversee a section of the medical division in Tsunade's absence. Her growth was steady and reliable, the kind that quietly held an army together. Nawaki, Yakushi Nono, and Himeji had instead been deployed to the Hidden Mist battlefield. As for Kushina, as the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, she would never be sent to the front lines unless the situation deteriorated beyond recovery. For now, she remained in the village. In truth, she had reason to resent this war more than most. She had only recently begun enjoying life as a jonin on active missions, only to be confined again because of the 9 tails sealed within her. After brief greetings, Minato said, "The tents have already been arranged by logistics. I will take you there." Under his lead, Hayashi and Mikoto quickly reached their assigned area. Although only a few months had passed, Minato clearly had much he wanted to discuss, especially regarding advanced ninjutsu. His eyes carried that familiar spark of curiosity and ambition. Hayashi understood immediately. Minato wanted to talk about the Flying Thunder God technique. However, it was already late. With missions awaiting them at dawn, Minato merely offered a few parting words before leaving. The Flying Thunder God technique was built upon advanced Fuinjutsu principles, yet it went far beyond conventional sealing arts. It required not only mastery of seals, but also extraordinary chakra control and spatial perception. Minato excelled in Fuinjutsu, but he was still young. Much of his time was spent on missions and refining his combat abilities. There remained many aspects he needed to polish. During his spare moments, Hayashi had studied the theoretical framework behind the technique. With his current knowledge, he could fully comprehend its structure. However, understanding it and executing it were two entirely different matters. He did not possess a natural affinity for space-time ninjutsu. At best, he could guide Minato conceptually. The actual breakthrough would depend on Minato himself. Fortunately, with Minato's talent, that breakthrough likely would not be far away. After Minato departed, only Hayashi and Mikoto remained outside their respective tents. "Get some rest," Hayashi said calmly. "Tomorrow's mission requires stealth." Mikoto smiled gently beneath the soft moonlight. She gave a small nod, then slipped into her tent without another word. Hayashi exhaled quietly and entered his own. They had fought side by side for years. Given their age and familiarity, sharing a tent would not have been unusual. Yet Minato had arranged separate accommodations. He lay back in his sleeping bag, staring at the canvas ceiling for a moment before closing his eyes. At dawn, faint footsteps outside stirred him awake instantly. When Hayashi stepped out, Mikoto was already prepared. She handed him the washing utensils and said, "The night patrol unit has returned. Several jonin have already deployed to the main battlefield. The genin squads left earlier under their captains." Hayashi nodded. "We will proceed as assigned." After washing up, Mikoto unsealed breakfast from a scroll. They ate quickly and efficiently before heading toward the camp gate. As they walked, Hayashi reviewed the mission details aloud. "According to intelligence, a Sunagakure squad will pass through a canyon in the desert this morning. That canyon is our interception point." He handed her a copied portion of the tactical map Orochimaru had provided. Konoha had strict rules. Sensitive intelligence could not be disclosed before deployment, even among squad members. Only once they were en route could such information be shared. After confirming the necessary details, the two set off toward the marked location. The land of wind was dry and unforgiving. Sandstorms were frequent, and canyons often provided both concealment and ambush opportunities. As an interception unit, their team was intentionally small. 3 to 5 members was ideal. Any more would increase the risk of exposure. The enemy squad consisted of 3 shinobi. 1 Quasi-Kage-level jonin led the group, accompanied by 2 elite jonin. One of them, judging by his attire and equipment, was clearly a puppet master. From a rocky outcrop overlooking the canyon, scattered snakes relayed detailed intelligence back to Hayashi. The information matched Orochimaru's reports precisely. Hayashi did not need to ask how Orochimaru knew so much. The answer was obvious. The canyon's highest point rose over 100 meters. Given the wind direction and their elevated position, detection was unlikely. After waiting in silence, Hayashi slowly opened his eyes. His black pupils shifted into golden vertical slits. Dark markings spread from the corners of his eyes, extending across his face in intricate lines. Sage mode. Mikoto, he said calmly, remain here. I will return shortly. The enemy force consisted of 1 quasi-kage level jonin, and 2 elite jonin. Strong but not overwhelming. Activating Sage Mode for such opponents might seem excessive. And yet, it was necessary. This mission carried additional secrecy. If even one enemy escaped, complications would follow. Moreover, they were operating deep within enemy territory. A prolonged battle would only draw attention. He needed to eliminate them quickly and cleanly. More importantly, he wanted to test the full extent of his Sage Mode in real combat. The desert wind howled faintly below. Without another word, Hayashi stepped forward and descended toward the canyon. 3 Sunagakure shinobi advanced cautiously along the narrow path. Moments later, the air shifted. Natural energy surged. To those below, it felt as if the desert itself had awakened. Hayashi moved. Chapter 407, 1 against 3 1056 words 1 quasi-kage level shinobi, 2 veteran elite jonin. If this level of combat power were not restrained on the main battlefield, the consequences would be unpredictable. A single breakthrough could destabilize an entire front. But if intelligence had already been intercepted and an encirclement executed cleanly, then the risk could be reduced to nearly nothing. Just like now. With one hand resting on his hip and the other casually lifting his index finger, Hayashi stared at the 3 burly Sunagakure shinobi before him. You are surrounded. 1 against 3. It could still be called an encirclement. Hayashi did not conceal himself. Not out of arrogance but because there was no need. In Sage Mode, his ninjutsu, taijutsu, and genjutsu were amplified to another level entirely. In this state, Hayashi's raw physical speed already surpassed what he could achieve when opening the first gate of the 8 gates. With lightning-released chakra flowing through his legs, his acceleration became explosive. Before the 3 Sunagakure shinobi could even process what they were seeing, a figure with golden snake eyes and dark markings across his face descended from above like a falling thunderbolt. Villains die from talking too much. Hayashi had no such intention. In the next instant, his eyes shifted into the 3 Tomo Sharingan. Lightning crackled faintly around him as he propelled himself forward at a speed nearly impossible to track with the naked eye. The ground beneath his feet fractured under the force of his launch. Konoha ambush. Our intelligence leaked. The thought had barely formed in the leading Jonin's mind before Hayashi had already slipped past the defensive line and appeared directly before the puppet master positioned in the rear. In any coordinated squad, puppet masters were priority targets. Just like medical ninja in Konoha. The Uchiha crest on his attire was unmistakable. A lone Uchiha with this level of strength left little room for doubt. Konoha's lightning flash, Hayashi. The shinobi who had shaken the battlefield during the Second Great Ninja War. The captain's shout came too late. A streak of blood arced through the air. The puppet master's head separated cleanly from his body before he had the chance to fully deploy his puppets. Hayashi stepped back instantly. An earth release technique surged upward in retaliation. Simultaneously, under the control of the remaining elite jonin, sand and broken stone peeled from the canyon walls and rained down from above. Perfect use of terrain. Hayashi leaped repeatedly, his movements precise and controlled, avoiding the falling debris, as though he had predicted each trajectory in advance. He sprinted up the canyon wall. The Sunagakure captain, a shinobi specialized in taijutsu, intercepted him mid-ascent. The man had already recovered from his initial shock. With coordinated support moments earlier, he used the body flicker technique to close distance in an instant. His fist shot forward, aimed directly at Hayashi's head. Hayashi did not move. Not until the fist was a breath away. Then he twisted slightly, the motion minimal yet perfectly timed, allowing the strike to graze past harmlessly. Using his left foot as a pivot, his right leg snapped upward in a clean arc. The impact landed squarely. For a brief moment, it seemed as though time had stalled. In reality, Hayashi had never moved faster. The sand shinobi could not evade. A thunderous impact echoed as the captain was kicked away like a launched projectile. A sharp sonic boom tore through the canyon air. Then a heavy crash as the man slammed into the rocky wall and plunged into sand and debris. Loose stones cascaded down, burying him. Hayashi walked forward calmly. An ordinary jonin would have died from that strike. But this one was different. He sensed something familiar. The rubble shifted. The Sunagakure captain emerged, his body covered in cracks like fractured glass. Armor of sand. Hayashi had seen this defense years ago in the Land of Rivers during the previous war. Back then, defeating it had cost him dearly. His subordinate, Yu, had fallen during that ambush. 5 years had passed since then. He would not struggle the same way again. Earth release, earth spikes. The remaining elite jonin finally resumed support. Yet in Sage mode, Hayashi's sensory perception had reached a level beyond conventional limits. He leaped before the spikes even broke through the surface. Metal clashed mid-air. Sparks flew as his kunai collided with the captain's blade. The sharp ringing of steel echoed repeatedly. At first, the sand captain detected nothing unusual. But with each successive clash, something felt wrong. His reactions were slowing. Hayashi's offense was accelerating. And the force behind each strike was overwhelming. Caught off guard, the captain took a kick to his arm. Using the recoil, he retreated to create distance. His entire arm went numb. The armor of sand shattered again under a single kick. The disbelief in his eyes was obvious. Konoha's lightning flash was known for lightning release and powerful genjutsu. Why was his taijutsu alone this oppressive? Was this even human? A more pressing thought emerged. Why had his subordinate stopped providing support? In those brief seconds of close combat, an elite jonin should have been able to unleash multiple techniques. Had Konoha sent reinforcements? There was no time to verify. Hayashi did not allow openings. The instant the captain's focus wavered, Hayashi slipped low and drove forward. Snake style. The sand captain's eyes widened in horror. Though Hayashi's fist had not yet physically touched him, an invisible force had already struck. Natural energy surged through the blow, distorting impact beyond conventional contact. His face twisted. Then his neck followed. The world tilted. The last thing he saw was the canyon wall behind him. Because his head had rotated 90 degrees. Silence returned to the canyon. Hayashi dusted off his hands lightly and turned toward the final enemy. The remaining elite jonin stood motionless, already trapped within a genjutsu cast earlier in the exchange. Even amid high-speed taijutsu combat, Hayashi had woven illusion seamlessly. In Sage mode, he had relied primarily on taijutsu and a single genjutsu. Yet the result was decisive. He regarded the immobilized shinobi calmly. Now, only one remained. The desert wind swept softly through the canyon, carrying away the scent of blood. Send Power Stones for bonus chapters, Patreon = Zeph chapter 408. Into the Lion's Den. The mission Hayashi and Mikoto accepted came with a clear requirement: one of the enemy had to remain alive. Not for interrogation. The purpose was infiltration. They needed a living Sunagakure shinobi to serve as an entry key into the Sand Village forward base, possibly even deeper into the battlefield command structure. Of course, not in his current state of mind. Any shinobi who rose to the rank of jonin, regardless of village, possessed unwavering loyalty. Sunagakure shinobi would die for the sand just as Konoha shinobi would die for the leaf. To achieve their objective, control was necessary. And control required powerful genjutsu. After careful consideration, the task naturally fell to Hayashi. He crouched before the last surviving elite jonin. "I need a small favor from you," he said calmly. "I trust you will not refuse." The terrified look in the sand shinobi's eyes faded into emptiness. Hayashi's three-tomo Sharingan rotated slowly. A few seconds later, the shinobi's pupils regained clarity, but the clarity was hollow. The mind inside no longer belonged entirely to itself. "Your genjutsu is incredible," Mikoto said softly as she descended from the canyon ridge. There was no jealousy in her tone, only quiet admiration. She too had awakened the three-tomo Sharingan. Yet controlling an elite jonin so completely was beyond her current reach. Even among members of the Uchiha clan, genjutsu ability varied greatly. It was not merely about possessing the same stage of Sharingan. It depended on ocular power and, at a deeper level, in release. Hayashi's illusion techniques were refined and oppressive, supported by unusually strong eye power. At times, he could even sense a ceiling above his current state, as if the three-tomo Sharingan was not the true limit. There was something beyond it, something waiting. But that barrier required a catalyst. For now, it remained just out of reach. "Captain, shall we return?" the controlled sand shinobi asked obediently. "Of course," Hayashi replied. He unfolded a scroll marked with the character for corpse, and sealed the two fallen bodies inside. With no traces left behind, Hayashi and Mikoto performed the transformation technique, taking on the appearances of the deceased Tsunegakure shinobi. The three figures left the canyon and advanced deeper into the desert. An hour later, guided by Orochimaru's intelligence and subtle subconscious suggestions implanted within the controlled jonin, they approached the sand village forward base. Their infiltration encountered almost no resistance. From a certain moment onward, the original surprise attack squad no longer existed. In its place were two Konoha shinobi walking calmly into the enemy's heart. The sand shinobi had chosen their base location well. Massive natural dunes shielded the camp from the worst sandstorms. The terrain cast wide shadows that cooled the area considerably. Compared to Konoha's exposed desert camp, this location felt almost comfortable. For a fleeting second, Hayashi thought that if circumstances were different, it would not be unpleasant to remain here longer. But such thoughts were distractions. He maintained absolute vigilance. They were surrounded by thousands of enemy shinobi. Even a warrior as powerful as the third Raikage would struggle to survive if completely encircled in such numbers. The first phase of their mission was complete upon entry. The second phase did not involve reckless destruction. Sabotage inside the camp would be suicide. Even Orochimaru would not assign a mission that guaranteed death without strategic value. "Lord Shinra." A passing sand shinobi greeted Hayashi respectfully. He responded with a simple nod. According to intelligence, the Quasi-Kage level captain he was impersonating, Shinra, was taciturn and ruthless. A solitary figure with no close associates. His personality was perfect for infiltration. Few people would question his silence. His strength alone discouraged suspicion. Mikoto's task was even simpler. Stand quietly. Say little. Let the disguise speak for itself. The sand shinobi who greeted them clearly knew Shinra's temperament. After giving a brief directional gesture, he departed without further conversation. "It seems the main tent is ahead," Mikoto murmured quietly. At the end of the path stood a tent taller than the rest. Hayashi paused briefly before walking forward, adopting Shinra's steady stride. Unlike Konoha's bustling command center, the sand headquarters was unexpectedly quiet. Documents and supply lists lay scattered across a large table. Inside, only one figure remained. The nominal commander of the sand forces. The last time Hayashi had seen him was during the Chunin exams in Konoha 4 years ago. Back then, Raza had been proud, impulsive, and openly hostile toward Konoha. He had spoken boldly of defeating the Leaf. And then he had lost to Minato. At that time, Minato had not yet displayed the brilliance that would later define him. In Raza's eyes, Minato had likely seemed insignificant. Now, 4 years later, Raza stood 17 years old. His features were beginning to resemble the men Hayashi would one day recognize as the fourth Kazekage, though traces of youth remained. Youth meant inexperience. And inexperience meant vulnerability. Hayashi's eyes lingered on him briefly. In sage mode, even suppressed beneath transformation, his perception remained sharp. Raza was strong. But not yet at his peak. The thought surfaced quietly. Should he eliminate him now? If Raza died here, the future of Sunagakure would shift dramatically. The war's trajectory might change. But such an act would also carry immense risk. Hayashi remained still, maintaining the role of Shinra. For now, the answer remained unspoken. Chapter 409, 409. The choice 11-14 words at this moment, Hayashi could have placed Raza under a simple genjutsu. With his current ocular power, subduing the young commander would not be difficult. Killing him would be even easier. But there was no reason to act on impulse. Unless Raza's death could instantly end the war in the Land of Wind, eliminating him here would achieve nothing meaningful. Wars might begin because of individuals, but they rarely end because of one. Removing Raza would only expose Hayashi and Mikoto, ruining their infiltration and wasting a rare opportunity. After a brief internal calculation, Hayashi abandoned the tempting thought. He stood calmly before Raza, maintaining the indifferent demeanor of Shinra. Senior Shinra, you've arrived. Although Raza was the current battlefield commander of Sunagakure, in terms of seniority he was still junior to Shinra. The greeting was appropriate. There's no need for formality, Hayashi replied in a cold, steady tone befitting Shinra's personality. You are the field commander. I am merely a shinobi assigned to assist. Speak plainly. Raza suppressed the faint discomfort in his chest. Shinra's reputation for bluntness was well known. Without further pleasantries, Raza led the three of them toward a wide desk covered by a detailed map of the ninja world. The Land of Wind was marked meticulously, and Konoha's encampments and supply routes were circled in ink. I'll be direct, Raza said. He pointed to a location heavily circled in black. Yunlu Canyon. Our intelligence indicates that Konoha will launch a full assault here in 2 days. The canyon's terrain favored defenders. Its narrow passageways and high ridges made large-scale offensives difficult. However, Konoha's attacks had grown increasingly aggressive. Our fortifications are incomplete, Raza continued. Our current manpower is insufficient to fully secure the canyon before the assault. He paused, waiting. I understand, Hayashi answered without hesitation. I will handle it. The words were simple, but coming from a quasi-Kage-level shinobi, they carried weight. Relief flickered across Raza's face. If his command duties did not require him to remain at headquarters, he would have personally defended Yunlu Canyon. His mastery of gold dust, derived from magnet release, allowed him to manipulate the desert itself. Within the Land of Wind, his power was amplified significantly. That strength was precisely why he had been appointed commander. Since Senior Shinra has agreed, Raza said, glancing at Mikoto and the controlled subordinate, aside from the two you brought from the village, I will allocate additional forces from the camp. Much appreciated. Hayashi's expression did not change. I will finalize the assignments tonight. For now, allow me to show you to your quarters. You must be fatigued from your mission. Hayashi gave a short nod. They followed Raza out of the command tent, maintaining perfect composure. At this point, the mission was halfway complete. Night descended over the sand camp. Inside the tent assigned to Shinra, Hayashi rested briefly while continuing to maintain his transformation. Across from him, Mikoto sat carefully, still fully disguised. Hayashi coughed lightly. Adjust your posture. Mikoto blinked. You are supposed to be a man, he continued quietly. Men do not sit with their knees together unless it is a formal ceremony. And they do not tilt their legs to one side. So how should I sit? She asked softly. Cross-legged. Like this. He demonstrated casually. Mikoto imitated him, folding her legs. How does it feel? A little strange, she admitted, but surprisingly comfortable. That's good. Endure it for a little longer. Once this is over, you can sit however you like. There was nothing flirtatious in his tone. Calm, protective, almost brotherly. In his mind, until she was older, Mikoto was someone he needed to look after. Maintaining a flawless transformation technique was not difficult for either of them. The challenge lay in sustaining it continuously while matching the impersonated individual's behavior, speech patterns, and temperament. After only half a day inside the enemy camp, Hayashi had gained a new appreciation for intelligence operatives. Some spies survived for years under constant suspicion. Others were exposed within hours. The psychological pressure alone was immense. He concluded that he was not suited for such work long term. If Orochimaru had not specifically ordered this mission, he would never have brought Mikoto into such a dangerous environment. Suppressing the thought, Hayashi bent over the map and began marking observations. Mikoto leaned forward slightly. "Are we going to seize Yunlu Canyon?" she asked. "Not seize," he corrected gently. "Sabotage. Then why not bypass it entirely?" "For shinobi, flanking is possible," Hayashi replied. "For supply lines, it is a disaster." He tapped the marked supply depot in the land of rivers. "If we detour, the distance increases significantly. The desert terrain and sandstorms would make transport nearly impossible. Our front line would collapse without supplies." He explained further. During the Second Great Ninja War, the conflict between Konoha and Sunagakure had taken place largely in the land of rivers. The terrain there was relatively flat, making maneuver warfare feasible. The land of wind was different. Endless desert. Violent sandstorms. Dangerous zones even Suna shinobi avoided. Over time, Sunagakure had established a relatively stable desert corridor along the border, constructing a chain of defensive positions along it. By drawing Konoha into the land of wind rather than fighting at the border, Suna intended to exploit its geographical advantage and exhaust Konoha's forces. In the Second Great Ninja War, it had been a war of attrition. Now, it was positional warfare. Konoha needed rapid advancement. Sunagakure aimed to delay. To secure victory, Konoha would have to push through successive strongholds until reaching Mount Kikyo. Beyond that lay open terrain stretching toward Sunagakure itself. Hayashi's gaze lingered briefly on the marked mountain. He knew the name from history. But such thoughts were secondary. After recording all necessary intelligence, he bit his thumb and performed a summoning. In a burst of smoke, Dabai appeared. Even under transformation, the contract bond allowed Dabai to recognize him instantly. The snake coiled affectionately around his neck before settling. "Enough," Hayashi said quietly. He handed over a sealed scroll. "Deliver this to Orochimaru." Dabai swallowed the scroll and disappeared in a puff of smoke. Hayashi watched the empty space for a moment. "Snakes really do like storing things in their stomachs," he muttered. For a fleeting second, a vague memory surfaced of hiding something unusual inside Dabai before. He frowned. "If I cannot remember it, it probably was not important." He shook his head and refocused on the mission. Outside, the desert wind howled faintly against the tent walls. Inside enemy territory, one wrong move meant death. Look up _Zeph on Patreon to get access to chapters in advance. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Novels Wonderland.